Welcome to What If Wednesdays. I'm your host, Mental Eunice, and I'm joined today by Michael Greer. Michael, are you ready?
What's up, Trek Nation? I am always ready.
Here we go. Welcome back. Welcome back. Michael Greer joining us today. Thank you so much for being here, Michael. How are you doing?
Listen, I'm really excited. I'm excited. It is a big day in the Trek world. And so I'm excited for Trek always.
No, I am too. It's just there's so much Trek going on that it's hard. That's why we picked like a cross quadrants today. Say that three times fast. Cross quadrants. We have going
Listen,
all over the place.
during the practice, I already messed it up. So I'm
No,
not going to. I am
it's
not
okay.
going to mess up another, or at least not mess up and have it recorded.
That's funny. We'll use it in the blooper reel because we already used like Marie in the blooper reel. We can do like another blooper reel. So, Michael Greer, thanks for joining us. I know it's early where you are; it's a little later where I am, and we have some questions. Just to pause it, like, what if in the Star Trek canon? This is the mechanic of the show. What if we had some pivotal moment that was changed slightly, or what would the consequences be? Very similar to the What If Marvel thing, but also like for the Star Trek canon. And I'm really happy to have you here. This is the first time we've had like this type of like one-on-one conversation. We're both really into Star Trek. We're both into healthcare as well. Uh, and it's been a great journey here at Trekker's Delight. Just before I forget, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment below on the video. Let us know how you're thinking and feeling about What If. If you have anything or any questions, please let us know. Michael, what do you think of the podcast so far? Have you been enjoying being on the different like types of formats?
I have. I've now been on three different. I've been invited to and privileged to co-host three different series, and so I'm really excited about all of the fun that we get to have and all of the discussions we get to have. And I know that there are probably lots of people out there watching that are like, "Hey, I think I could do that, or I have a point that I'd like to make." I would just say, listen, do like I did, and just reach out and say, let's do this thing. I want to be a part
Totally,
of it.
totally.
And it's a really great time, and it's really fun. And speaking specifically to What If, I just kind of love, whenever you watch Trek or watch a show, you kind of sometimes you have those threads in the back of your mind, and it's like, oh, what if they would have just changed this or do this? This really gives that opportunity to have that discussion and say like, what if that scene didn't happen, or we reversed the order of that show and we rewrote canon in this major way. And so I'm excited about it.
Me too. Me too. I mean, I really enjoy having different guests, and it's nice. We've had a few different people in rotation here, and uh, I was hoping to do something where I can get more reactions from the other guests, but it's nice to actually have like a one-on-one um, with someone at almost commensurate level. Like it's not that I've gotten a little rustier with age. I haven't done a speed like machete cut like through all of Star Trek recently. I've been trying to keep up with Discovery. Prodigy is coming back like to weekly live shows and stuff, which is really fascinating. It's actually one of more favorite things. Lower Decks definitely occupies a very special space for me because unlike a lot of Star Trek, it occupies a space of humor that isn't really found in like other like it's so fast and so clipped and so referential. It almost feels like a Rick and Morty episode. So I'm very happy to see those types of treks. I have some prepared questions for you. I was hoping that we can start with one that I think is a little strange, but I feel is an important question just because of the timing of how things happened. Um, so I'm just going to come right out and ask you, what do you think would have happened? What if the Dominion encountered the Borg before the Federation? What do you think would have happened, or like what the consequences to the
Hmm.
yes? What do you think of this matchup before the Federation? So I know that there's a couple interpretations here, so I'm just gonna let you zip off and then I'll respond. Go ahead.
First off, let me talk about the picture. I just love the analogy of having Gul Dukat looming in the background, like he
Yeah,
literally did all of the series of Deep Space Nine. And so I love that. But two, shout out to DS9 on 29 years. Today marked their 29 big day in Trek, big day in
yeah,
Trek. 29 years, and their 30th anniversary, of course, is going to be next year. Back in 1993, I believe they premiered. So great time. This is a great period for Trek. But let's get into it. So talking about yes, yes.
yeah. I just threw it out so just to remember.
Talking about the Borg and the Dominion. So, I for a moment, I think I'm going to take and set aside any Star Trek, any reference to any Star Trek books, and just focus on the actual series. So,
Agreed. I
anybody
agree.
who's a deep Trekkie, I know where your mind immediately goes, but we're gonna set that aside for a little while. And so, I think that we would have to imagine a period where the Borg tried to expand. I think the Borg would try to expand more aggressively into the Beta Quadrant versus the Alpha Quadrant, and or excuse me, not the Beta Quadrant, the
Delta.
g-
Or not Delta, Gamma.
Gamma. There we go.
Gamma.
um, into the Gamma Quadrant, and as many times as Cisco said it, you would think we would have remembered right off the rip. But expanded into the Gamma Quadrant, and the reason I think that it would be the Borg, I think the Dominion kind of they they look to bring order, not necessarily. I think they would look at the Borg and say, "Hey, they're pretty orderly. I don't think it's that tidy. I wouldn't do it, but they would respect the order that they have and not
Hmm.
immediately want to have a conflict." And so I would imagine in this what if world, it would be the Borg saying like, "Oh, they've created some nice structures. They have nice technology. We need to assimilate that and bring it into us." And so I really imagine that the Borg would attack the Dominion full on, and it would be this kind of technological race where the Dominion is trying to figure out how they can like outcompete the Borg in technology, while the Borg is ultimately assimilating everything in their path. And I
Yes.
really think that a big part of it would hinge on the assimilation of the Vorta. And so I imagine
Interesting.
that. Say it again.
Interesting. I like
Yeah,
that.
I imagine that. Well, think of it. The Vorta are really the gatekeepers of the Dominion. They actually knew who the founders were.
True.
They actually knew. They ran all of the work. They were the
Yeah.
actual. They ran the organization day to day. The Vortas were the face of the Dominion, and the founders were like, "Oh, you just know who we are and keep us separate." And so, I think what would happen is there would be like an assimilation of a Vorta, and in that assimilation of a Vorta, they would ultimately figure out like the crux of it, and they would wear that butt out.
Yeah.
They would be wearing out the Dominion.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think the Dominion would come back and really have this. The Dominion's able to make technological advances and learn very, very quickly. And so I think that they would be come up with some new technologies. And I think for a while they would also be able to hold off the Borg because they're the Jem'Hadar are loyal foot soldiers, and they are
Yes.
kamikazes, and we saw that in season 3, episode 1. They're kamikazes, and they will do anything to win. And
Yes.
so I imagine that it would be a lot of, we're just running straight into this Borg ship and exploding and throwing everything we have, and they have an immense amount of resources. For over 10,000 years, they've been amassing ships and weapons and energies and so forth and so on. So it would
Hmm.
be, yeah, um, it would be pretty intense. But it would be the Borg. The Borg would ultimately prevail over time, um,
Interesting.
which would also, must say, put them in a stronger position to conquer the Alpha Quadrant.
Agreed. If the Borg had somehow taken over the Dominion or had like figured out how to insinuate themselves into the Dominion and just took them like straight over, then I and barreled over, they would have definitely used. They would have found out about the wormhole eventually. They would have definitely made it to the Alpha Quadrant from 2 points, and they would have completely like run over the Federation because they would have also had the resources of the Dominion and all the secrets of a galactic empire that they have absorbed into their actual nest. So I'm going to address a few things. There's 3 main points that I'm going to like talk to you about. One, I'm going to address the part about the Vorta. Oh, sorry. Let me start with the Jem'Hadar and work up. The Jem'Hadar were flawed because, and that was in potential because on purpose, with the Ketracel White, they were enzymatically challenged. They were unable to metabolize a certain thing. Only the founders were able to do that. Two things: if the Borg had figured out how to synthesize Ketracel White, then they could have taken them or incorporated them into their collective. But they also have been known to reject species, not
Inferior
necessarily
species.
inferior species, not just because they're like they're big, but they also could have said this is more trouble than they're worth as drones. As drones, maybe they don't have the actual like as drones, so they don't wouldn't fit into the collective. But the second part of that is that they would just die. So I could see that also that they're suicidal, but they're not actually like incorporated into the greater part of the Borg collective. Well, Vorta might, they're incredibly intelligent, whatever. But here's where my suspicions of the genetic manipulation of the Vorta come into play. I think that if you remember with Wayun, he had a terrible sense of taste, but an amazing sense of smell. He could resist all kinds of poisons. He had no concept of beauty. I think that they were as there's a story of the Vorta and how they were discovered as like lemurs or whatever, and
Hmm.
how they were like genetically manipulated up. I think that when the Borg tried to assimilate the Vorta, if in this scenario, that they either just died immediately or fed them disinformation or corrupted their systems. I think that they were like that would be my suspicion. The third point that I would make, once upon a time, I believe it was Seven of Nine. I want to say that it was Seven of Nine who told Catherine Janeway in the second or last episode or whatever, when she tried to destroy the transwarp hubs, that there were only 6 in the entire universe or in the galaxy. Um, I'm assuming one of them went to the Gamma Quadrant, and so they would have already tried something with the Dominion that we hadn't seen, and I bet they failed. I think that there was a failure there, and that's
Hmm.
why they're not actually there. Um, Something where they tried to go, something where they tested the waters like species 8472, and there's something about the Dominion that we just don't know on the forefront, like other species maybe in the Dominion, that put off the Borg from encroaching even further. This is my what if
Hmm.
of this thing. What do you think of those ideas?
Interesting, interesting. So I here's my only thought. I think, or my thought. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the Jem'Hadar. My only thought on the Vorta is that ultimately, I think that going back to the episode of Voyager where the Queen cracked the head of one of the drones that refused to comply for Unimatrix Zero to get that information. I imagine that the Borg would say, you know what, we need to make a technological advancement or utilize some type of species that would allow us to access these memories correctly. And they would advance fast enough. I think they would. ultimately advance fast enough to do that, just because of that Unimatrix Zero. But I do agree they would be very, very resistant. Like the disinformation, they would be pushing back. It wouldn't
Hmm.
be they wouldn't be railroading them. This would be a pushback. Um, and the only reason I say that the only re- in that yeah, but the only reason I would say that they have not tried, um, it it wouldn't make sense to me at least for the board to give up on all of that advanced technology. Um, so they have a cloaking or they have transport ability that goes through shields. The Borg don't
That's
have
right.
that. The
I
Borg
thought they did.
when
In they cut through the early in the TNG thing. They go right through their shields. They transport right through their shields.
yes,
Yes.
but since then, since we developed multiphasic shielding,
Yes,
we
you're
have
right.
not been or we have not
Correct.
or multi-frequency shield. I can't remember. No, metaphasic shields are what we use
Metaphasic
against them.
shields. Yeah, yeah.
Multiphasic is what we use against the Borg. Sorry.
Correct. No, 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 no. I'm following. I'm with you.
And so yeah, and so since then you haven't seen where the Borg just beam on. They have to
Yeah.
either punch a hole in the shields or
Yes, you're right.
even going back to I believe it's First Contact. The only reason the Borg are able to transport aboard are their shields were down for just an instant.
Right. The timing
And
of it.
yeah, and so like the this is something I think the Borg would look at that and be like, we need that, and it makes no
Yeah.
sense that we don't have it. Let's go get it. Um, but also in the what if world, what if the Borg and the Dominion are already fighting during this entire time, and
Yes. Yes.
we just really don't know it?
Right. It's such a it's a galactic, right? It's a whole
Yes,
quad. We don't know.
it,
Uh.
and
Yeah.
in one thing that we haven't talked about the founders, what the Borg would do with the founders. I really think the Borg would essentially just keep the founders on a specific world, um, and just essentially try to manipulate their genetics, and try to
Yes.
figure out how to yeah, because
Yeah.
ultimately, I imagine their DNA is similar to species 8472 and is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and being so complex, they would be like, this may not be the pinnacle of a species, but this is pretty close. But we need this. Put them on a world, experiment, figure out how to, yeah,
Definitely. They would definitely want to. Yeah, because they want knowledge. You know,
yes.
we don't forget that about the Borg is that they assimilate technologies and cultures. That's how they get to know people. Seven said that once as well.
Hmm.
So I agree with you completely. I think we're of the same mind. I think that would be very an amazing clash that if we ever saw it. I'm really happy we got to see the A472 Borg clash, whatever. But seeing the Dominion and Borg fight, two galactic, even though that was extra galactic, like the A472 was from fluidic states and whatever.
Hmm.
Seeing the Dominion and the Borg, two galactic empires that like have completely different ways of like pursuing technology and cultures and how they subsume certain other cultures because they both do that as well,
Hmm.
and terrorize planets, but have their own like modus operandi. I could see that the clash between their ideals, similar to how they clash with the Federation ideals, which are more high-minded, would have been a reason for them to fight. I think they would have come to some natural technological stalemate, and they each would have tried to like gain a foothold on one another in some biological or technological fashion. That's
Right.
my last 2 cents on that.
Or you know what? And to be just like really evil, the Borg also probably would have just went and destroyed every world that they could have made Ketracel White from, and then sat back and been like, "Now what? Now
Yeah,
what's up, homie?
that's right.
your your empire has crumbled.
That's
The
smart.
Jem'Hadar are the gate or not the gatekeepers are the enforcement arm, and without that
Yes.
enforcement arm, they have no loyalty
Yeah.
from their subjects. Without the Jem'Hadar, yeah, send one or two Borg cubes in, um, equip them with ultimate regenerating, like boost up their regeneration processes a bunch, and just be like, can you make Ketracel White from this planet? Blow it up, blow up the planet.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's great.
Yes, but ultimately, so question to you: do you think you said they would reach a technological stalemate? Who would win through that stalemate?
my thing is that the Borg don't have they don't have the creative spark. That's the reason that they reached out for Locutus, or that's why they had Seven of Nine. Ultimately, they were human enough to think of creative solutions the Borg themselves could not envision. They were really good at pouncing on those ideas, but the actual development of those ideas, like the nanoprobes against A472 or whatever, those uniquely human sparked creative ideas, they don't have them. They seek them. They don't, because they're of a like mind, so they don't actually have that. I think that they would have lost to the Dominion in creativity. The Dominion is also gatekeeping certain information, like who the actual founders are, what uh, weaknesses the Jem'Hadar have, which is the Ketracel White, what weaknesses the Vorta have. Once they discovered those weaknesses, they would exploit them. But to find them out would be quite difficult at first. That's what
Yeah,
I
but
think.
like at the end of the day, who would have won?
I, I mean, the Borg is like they're.
Borg or Dominion? Yes, I am putting you in a tough corner. Borg or
I think
Dominion?
the Borg would win.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
I
I
only
just
say
yeah.
that because the ultimate, if you overran, even if it took a really long time, you overran the Jem'Hadar and you overran the Vorta. All that's left is um, the shapeshifters. And unless they were like brilliant at like going into Borg cubes and then changing their density to like explode, which you've never seen, just like, oh, I'm gonna go in, like they
Hmm.
could fly through space. I never understood that. Like they can change their mass and density at will. They can just go into a thing and then just become a planet. And come, like it's possible if they knew how to do that, you know. Um,
That's a what if what if like going keeping in the same vein of DS9 celebrating that anniversary again today. Shout out DS929. Um uh what if the planet that uh the actual founders lived on was a planet of like
I,
old changelings. Well, changelings never die, but like the planet itself was made of changelings.
yes, I hear what you're saying. It's just like
That would be interesting.
that would be wild. A conglomeration of changelings that like just created their own environment. Brilliant.
Abort. I like
I
interesting,
like that
great.
idea.
But
Okay.
abort victory all around. We see
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Borg
I like it.
wins. Awesome. I'm glad that was great. I like that. That was nice. Okay, I'm gonna keep it moving on to the next idea. The Borg Dominion threat has now been
Let me
terminated.
put my hands
I
down. My hands look huge in this video. Like,
if you it's all because it's all white behind you. But like bring it up. Yes, it's forced perspective.
right. Like, big hand.
Mm, that's not bad. That's not a bad thing. um, I have a question. We discussed this earlier um, about Voyager, and my question
Shout
is
out
in regards
Voyager.
to shout
Best
out to
Star Trek
Voyager.
series.
Oh man, bold! It is amazing. The mechanic of it is fantastic. I do enjoy the idea of the far flung ship. So, what if you had Captain Chakotay instead of Captain Janeway? What if somehow, and we did explore this in this one episode about the insurrectionist holographic program that we ultimately found out Tuvok wrote, and he thought of it, and then the crew really enjoyed running the simulation. So I'm going to put this to you: what if Chakotay had become captain of the Voyager instead of Captain Janeway? We're also seeing that they're bringing the idea of Captain Chakotay to Prodigy. This is a new development. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. Well, first off, let me say I'm so excited to see Chakotay returning to Star Trek. In any shape, form, or fashion. Robert Beltran is a great actor, and he has like a very commanding and dominant idea while also being kind of like soft and kind of like inspirational. It's
Hmm.
very it's like almost a more forceful version of Picard, and I like him as a leader, just overall. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited about range as an actor and coming back to the Trek universe, and that the Trek Nation gets to see him all over again. I'm really excited about that in Star Trek Prodigy. Um, and so Captain Chakotay, utilizing all of those things I just said, I think that in the insurrection episode, saw him being a lot more cutthroat, and willing
Yeah,
to drop off people on another planet, so forth and so on. I don't think that that would have been. I don't think that would have been him as a captain.
right. That's
Um,
Tuvok before he knew Chakotay and knew what he was capable of. He wrote this program as the worst case scenario. Yeah.
yeah. Or you know what else I'm thinking of? The episode where they received a message from home that was encoded from the guy that was a former Maquis.
Oh yes, and it activated
Yes,
Tuvok.
and
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one.
I'm remembering like they were going to drop everyone else off on the planet, and I think that that was a weird episode though. I wish they would have taken out that movie reference. What if they didn't have that crazy movie reference in there? um, but I think that uh, I think he would have been a lot. I think he would have been a mix between Picard and probably Archer. And I think he would have encountered a lot of situations a lot more differently. So I'm thinking about one of my favorite Star Trek episode, and please don't hate on me. Don't hate. But my favorite or Voyager episode, I should say, not Star Trek episode, is Sacred Ground.
Sacred
And
ground. Yes.
yes, and I love that episode. I think it is one of Captain Janeway's kind of like defining moments. And I love the kind of setup they talk about for science. And I think that when we take like a Captain Chakotay and put him in that, um, I think that look at that was quick.
Yeah, just got it real quick while you're.
I think that if we took a Captain Chakotay and put him in this scenario and in this situation, it would have been very dynamic, and he would have picked up on kind of the spiritual aspect of the spiritual lens between like technology and science and how this culture has like merged that a lot more quickly. And I would have
Yes.
loved to see him in that light. And that would also tie into apparently there were aliens that landed that taught the Native Americans.
Yeah, yeah.
That taught Native Americans.
Akuchimoya.
Kushimoya. So
I
that
carved
would
the
have
bones.
been like a really, really intense thread that also had a subsequent tie. And so I think what if there was Captain Chakotay, we would be looking at a much more versus Captain Janeway. I think we would be looking at a much more um, aggressive series with these really like kind and spiritual undertones
Hmm.
that are allowed to be the justification for their actions overall. And so you would have like um, the encounter with the Brunali. I think that
Oh
um,
yeah. Icheb's people.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like the encounter with the Brunali, I think would have been more so kind of like um, I understand what you're doing, but I'm also going to stop this from happening and prevent you from being able to do it again. Um, I think that
Interesting.
I think Chakotay would have been like, you know, I'm going to take Egypt, I'm going to destroy your ship, and I'm going to come back and prevent you all from launching these ships again and being able to do this again to uh, another young boy or another young kid and sacrificing him.
I hear
Yeah,
what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I'm
but
gonna.
yeah, to
No, no.
you,
I hear it. No. Go ahead. Go ahead. Cap it off. Cap it off.
Captain Chakotay. What
Yeah.
what did we get from a Captain Chakotay?
So, what I will say first, okay, is it's fantastic as an idea, and I get how Tuvok shaped his program after the variables that he knew when he knew them about a possible insurrection on the ship, mutiny on a Star Trek ship, right? It's rare. Um, what I will say is, if it happened right away, Chakotay was still fresh from being Maquis. He had also just learned that Tuvok had betrayed him. He was pissed off that he didn't know Seska betrayed him. One of the
Mm.
reasons that Seska actually turned, like actually revealed herself, was that it was discovered. It didn't happen. It didn't happen where she kept her cover as long as she could. Once she realized that there was no hope and whatever, she aligned herself with whatever. I think he would have gotten a much different betrayal from Seska. I think she would have, and she tricked herself into making Chakotay being
Yeah.
captain. Because he wasn't captain, he was reined in by Janeway when he was like when she was pregnant and stuff, and he was making all these emotional decisions. I think it would have been left. Yeah, yeah. I think it would have been left to like Bilana to be his like first officer instead of his engineer, and then they would have double had it, taking on the
Hmm.
actual. Yeah, because he was only listening to her and he didn't trust Tuvok. He lost. Yeah, I
That is now that I didn't even think of that. Oh, Balana as first officer.
and chief engineer. Like I think she would have done both, double hatting, and then realized she was being stretched. And so I think he would have gone to her for counsel and stuff. And the chief medical officer, I think, would have reprogrammed the EMH to like do what they wanted. I think they would have kept the Starfleet crew in check. They would have either come to some tense understanding where he was still the captain and Janeway then became his first officer, and then stuff fell into place there. And then he learned from her and stayed captain to save face in front of the Maquis, who had won the mutiny, and then slowly became more gentle and did turn into the Chakotay that we know, but from a position of power rather than from a position of being the second in command. I think there are many times where Janeway reined in Chakotay, his natural emotional impulses. So you bring up Sacred Ground, which is a great episode, and definitely his interpretation of that would have been much cleaner and more decisive because he would have seen through it. That episode, I think, for me is a lot more about like challenging Janeway's faith versus scientific beliefs, and the hypotheses, the hypothetical construction that she kept like hypothesizing. Well, this must be happening, or this must be happening, and then it all falls apart, and then she makes a leap of faith, which turns out to be correct, and then and only then, when Kess is saved and all this stuff, does the doctor come out and say, "Oh, can you believe it? This is what was going on all along." And she does this far away look. Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
she's incredulous of something that she's believed her entire life. She's a consummate scientist, a skeptic through and through. We're both scientists, me and you, so we both understand that desire to have faith in science as well. But what happens when science fails you utterly? I think Chakotay was, for all, I think he became more spiritual on Voyager because he was, if you see the flashbacks to him as a kid, he's like rejecting his culture and whatever until,
Yeah.
he's like, I don't believe in any of this stuff like that. I think he would have had his own journey as captain, balancing faith and science, and I think Janeway would have pushed him towards science, and Balana would have become more into the faith part of it because she was also rejecting her own faith and Stovacor. She had her own episode and stuff. So I think that there's really dynamic stuff there. I don't
I,
think Tuvok could redeem himself. Go ahead.
I love what you're doing. This discussion of kind of, but what makes a captain isn't necessarily being captain. It's the support system around them. And you're really diving deep. And I didn't even think to go to the support system like at all. And
Yeah.
this is the support system would be amazing. Like I just did not, yeah, I did not think of the support system. I am, wow, doing
I'm
that.
glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Like, wow. but
I'm happy.
but throughout Trek, you constantly see there's growth on all sides, even in
Yeah.
Picard. Either they're growing in a smaller way on a specific issue, or like you take a Cisco or a Burnham, that arc, and they are growing over the entire series. Or
Sure.
Captain Freeman, she's in the same vein as Picard. She grows from episode during each individual. So she does little incremental
Yes.
changes and grows in
Yes.
her thought process. Um, And so like you see that and it's like, oh, okay, great. But wow, to really
Yeah.
imagine like the support system and how that would shape Captain Chakotay, I'm floored. Um,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
do you think it would have taken 7 years with Captain Chakotay?
Okay. You're not gonna like the answer. I don't think you're gonna like it. Two things that occur to me. Um, it depends on when the mutiny was. Has the caretaker already destroyed the array?
Okay.
So that's what I'm asking you in the
Well, no, no,
scenario.
I
Has
would I would give you to you set it up.
uh,
You set it up.
I could see Chakotay sacrificing the Akampa at that time to get back. Because I think he's someone who thinks that the ends justify the means and that the cause of the Maquis was supreme in his mind. And he just, the only reason that they were stuck is because Janeway outclassed the Maquis and was able to fuse them together. And only because Chakotay was receptive. If you don't have a Chakotay in that scenario, the Maquis would have had to, they would have gone their own way. It was only because they were loyal to Chakotay, and Chakotay had been in Starfleet that he realized he made it as like a command decision. Like we have to band together. We're in this like, and this is
That
the only
training took
culture that
over.
we know. Yeah, yeah. Whereas if they did stay and they went through, I can see him becoming more of a Kirk character, where he bucks more of the trends. And I think that if they got to the point where they get to Captain Ransom and he's like killing those small aliens to like jump farther and farther and they catch up with him, I could see him getting home faster because he might not ethically. I don't know about where he'd be in his like thing, but
Mm.
let's say he encountered Ransom earlier instead of later, like Janeway did. If he encountered Ransom earlier, I could see him adapting that and becoming darker, especially with Seska in his ear. Remember, during all this, Seska's there, and
Yeah.
he trusts her implicitly, and they have a kid together and stuff. I could totally see him hooking up with like Seska, and like Janeway's there with folded arms, going, "You shouldn't be trusting Seska," and she whispers to the Balana, and she's like trying to get Balana, and Balana finally comes over, and then they have Tuvok and whatever, and you have Tom Paris and Kim there. They're both just trying to be like brash and whatever. So you have almost like a mirror universe version of Voyager.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
so
just gonna.
so would Seska have ever gone? And I'm going to go back and answer my own question if it would have taken 7 years too. But do you think in your situation, Seska would have went to the Kazon?
No, I think that she would have hung on. I
I
don't.
think
I
so
think she
too.
would have been. Yeah, we would not have discovered she was Cardassian at all. It might be like a pop up thing in like the fifth or sixth, like way later. I think she would have gotten to the EMH way easier because the Starfleet protocols uh kept them from. Oop, that's Jermaine in the wings. Hi, Jermaine. I think she would have because she was brilliant too, Seska. She was brilliant. I think she would have reprogrammed the EMH to never, anytime he scanned, would have hidden, given him a subroutine to hide until one day those subroutines all came out, and then they realized she was actually Cardassian. Remember how she hidden all these like protocols and programs? I think
Yeah,
she would have.
I still love
Yeah.
execute command XJL, and I'm like, who came up with XJL?
I'm sure it was like personal too. Like we don't
Right.
know, but yeah. But yeah, that's what I think. That's how I feel about all of this. I
Well,
think
and
it would have
I
been a very different journey.
so I think that I think that it would have probably taken longer than 7 years. I got to be honest. Um,
Interesting.
and the reason I do, I think that Chakotay would not have been as bullish on the Borg. Um,
Oh, agreed.
I don't think he would have been as bullish on the Borg. I think he would have been
Oh,
like,
totally.
that's yeah. I
He kept
think
wanting to
that
capitulate. Yeah.
yeah, or like let's get around. Let's go like let's avoid. We're not. I think Janeway, when it comes to a fight, I think she's Kirk. When it comes to command, in a general sense, I think she's a lot more reserved.
Yes,
And
yes. More
so
like Picard. Yes.
yeah, and so yeah, I think Chakotay would have been like, Borg what? Borg who? other way.
Yeah.
um,
No, I agree
and
with you.
and
You
I
make an
think that
amazing point.
I go back to him recommending at the Northwest Passage, when they found out that species or 8472 was the reason. Him like, let's settle on a planet. I think
He
he would
did
have.
do that. You're right.
I think it would have taken longer than 7 years.
Or they
If
wouldn't
they
have
would have,
got there at
if
all.
I was about to say
Yeah.
if they made it at all. Um, yeah, I think yeah, definitely longer.
Who knows what species they would have encountered given the way, like a Plinko match, like how she moved through the quadrant and then jumped and then whatever. So she encountered random species along the way. Maybe they would have encountered someone else that would have showed them, like maybe they would have gotten to like some subspace catapults or something else that like took them and stuff. Maybe Q actually took them if his encounters with Q were different. There's so many what ifs in the realm of Captain Chakotay. We're
Mhm.
actually gonna get a Captain Chakotay in the Prodigy, so we'll see that come to like fruition of seeing like what actually Captain Chakotay looked like. But in the
Well, I don't
context
know
of
if
like,
it's going to be a Captain Chakotay. I know
oh, I thought it
Chakotay.
is,
I don't know if it's Captain Chakotay.
isn't it?
I
It
don't.
says Robert Beltran returns for Star Trek Prodigy as Captain Chakotay.
Hmm. That
Yeah,
will
yeah, it
be
says it.
okay. That'll be interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't. I didn't know that it was. So what I had heard originally was just like he was coming back. I didn't hear he was coming back as Captain
I
Chakotay.
just read it. I literally just read it in the thing. I think that's why it popped up when I wrote Captain Chakotay.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
it's not the captain we're talking about. We're talking about from the start.
Yes, from the start, rewriting that. What if? What if the whole being flung by the caretaker changed and came out a little bit different, just a
Yeah,
hair different?
totally. Well, that was great, man. And I'm so happy to have asked that question because I never thought about it before, and so everything I was spitting was kind of like it was new to me as I was like considering it. But I also enjoyed the way that you reacted and then threw back so that I could like have a chance to see something about my ideas and how they go. So I really enjoyed that. That was great, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Are you ready for our last question?
We're here.
Yeah, this is the last question I'm going to ask you. Um, and this one is a question that I've asked throughout Trekker's Delight. Um, it's very personal to me, this question. What if the looming AI threat in Picard, the tentacular, as Marie would put it, the tentacular AI that shows up in the last episode of Picard in the first season, crossed over into Discovery in some way? I'm just going to quickly pull up a picture that I have somewhere here. Um, yeah, so here we have Burnham and Picard. What if this AI made its way into Discovery, or that in the next season we find that it was there all along in some fashion? What would you think about how that would manifest, and what do you think would happen to the series? How would it shape the evolution of that series?
Well, first I can smell the 3 episode crossover event, and if it wasn't 3 episodes, CBS, you and I, we are gonna have to, or Paramount, you and I are gonna have to throw hands because it would deserve 3 episodes. I swear to
Totally.
you.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's not a season.
so I think that there would have to be, of course, a time component, which I really think is great. So if that were to cross over, I think they would have to be going after Zora. So there would have to be two options. Either Zora would have to evolve into this AI threat, maybe from the perspective of she is now feeling emotions and she is depressed and alone, and that depression turns into rage and anger and creates the AI threat, or the AI threat is after her to capture her so that the AI threat can evolve further and understand ultimately its enemy, which is humanity and the emotional thought processes. So um,
Interesting.
I think there would have to be a temporal component, and it would have to be centered around Zora um, in some way, shape,
Okay.
form, or fashion. Uh, and I think it would take 3 solidly good episodes because there would have to be a capture, a retrieval, and there has to be some good drama in there and some underpinnings. And we're gonna have to lose a character or two during the
Everyone's
series.
insisting. You're so funny that you said that because everyone throughout all these podcasts have been saying that in the live shows and stuff. People have been echoing this idea that we need to like lose people. I keep saying no.
Well, I mean, well, let's do a what if on Discovery and the crew was
Mm.
smaller. Maybe we would actually get to know them.
Or we had
So
like double the episodes, but yeah,
right.
it's like man,
Um, but yeah, and so like you have to lose, but the cast is huge. The cast
yeah, it
is
is big.
very very big, and I think that they're trying to figure out what to do with all of these people, and
Hmm.
at this point, you got to start Game of Thronesing people.
Dang,
Yeah.
like
It-
Ariam and that Barzite Benzite
mhm.
girl. Although I saw her, I think she's coming back at the end of the last episode. She's part of the trailer for the next season. I don't know if it's a flashback or something, but yeah, I don't want to lose. Like we lost Tilly off the show for a while, but she's still alive. Like if we lost them and they're alive, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and I
Just don't
mean
want them
that
to die.
can happen too. And yeah, I am excited for the Barzan girl. If a
Mm.
flashback to the Barzan wormhole, um,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
TNG
yeah,
classic,
yeah,
with a Voyager thread.
yeah.
Um,
That's true.
and so I really
Mm,
am
good
excited to see
throwback.
her. I thought she was great, and I really wish they would have brought her on. Because I think they did a decent job of giving her a background story. Um,
She was awesome.
yeah,
She was
and
kick
I'm like,
ass.
you gave her a background story would have been perfect to now weave her in. And
Yeah,
I like to look at Reese, but I don't know him.
yeah. We're
Um,
getting there. We're getting there. It's
yeah,
taking a
we're
while.
possibly. And I have another. We'll end it with another what if option. But
Do it.
the AI threat. This is your baby. This
Yeah,
is your baby. The
yeah.
AI threat crossing from Picard into Discovery. Where are we?
So here's what my okay. I ultimately think if you did it, I think that control wasn't fully destroyed in the time of discovery, and it will pop up in the Picard time. In which case, some sort of temporal event draws them, or Q does some messed up stuff where he brings them to the 32nd century or whatever. But somehow Picard and his crew, like that crew from that ship, is brought to the 32nd century, and somehow they're chasing control or something from getting to Zora. That would involve all of those components and bring it, of course, like to the Calypso episode and stuff like that. And you had different temporal mechanics, and they could weave it into part of the temporal Cold War from
Ah,
Enterprise. Yeah,
ah.
that's my thing. I see mirror universe and parallel universes with Tarkan, Tarka, Ruan Tarka. Do you know the really smart dude who's like
Mm-hmm.
manipulating everyone? And I could see him for some reason like weaving his way back to control or working for control. Maybe they've worked for the Emerald Chain. He had that like scar in the back. There's some insidious nature there from Ruan Tarka. He's Ryzian and he's always like trying to like be jovial, but there's he's manipulated book and he's manipulated people, but he's the smartest guy in the room. And so we haven't seen him really to show his hand. I think that when he does reveal it, and I think he's dropped like small hints about it, like being from another universe and stuff. Um, I think that you're gonna find that if you had somehow a Picard crossover or he was brought into the Discovery world or whatever, it was to defend the universe. It would have to be like that AI that's in the Picard thing at the end somehow figured out about a looming threat in the 32nd century, and now they're being brought by time agents to each of these points to defend, and then they accidentally like by doing that bring control forward. I don't know how like they would do it, but as a causality loop, and maybe Q gets in on the action. I don't know, but I think that it would weave those elements. I think that the DMA. I originally thought that the DMA was a graviton ellipse. I thought it was a natural occurring phenomenon that they didn't get it right because it popped in and out of subspace, which is what the graviton ellipse does. And they wrongly said in the show that there is no natural phenomenon that does this, but it's clearly established in Voyager that this does exist. A phenomenon does exist like this. I don't know if you remember that episode with
Yeah, but
Seven of Nine. Yeah, go ahead.
but with the graviton ellipse, it still takes time to cross through subspace to get there.
Yes,
So it
correct.
wouldn't instantaneously do it like that.
No, no, you're right. You're right. You
Yeah.
could never know where it like pop, and it did move through subspace and then popped out randomly.
Yeah,
That
it
was what
pops
I
out.
originally thought.
It pops out randomly, but the with the DMA
The
was
DMA is
what
non-random.
nothing that does. There's nothing that does that in that amount of time um to do that. And I think it was like 30 seconds or a minute or something that it had disappeared. I can't remember that exact timing on that. Need to go back and
Mm-hmm.
watch that episode again.
Sure,
But
sure.
yeah, that was the what they were saying was unnatural. It wasn't so much that nothing travels through subspace. Plenty of things travel
Yeah.
through subspace. It was
Yes.
nothing does that in that amount of time.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that part. What I had thought was the unnatural part was when they said that it had non-random movement. It reacted to them. It actually changed course when they tried to get closer. They're like, it no longer is like along what we're predicting in probability. They're like, this is non-random events. This thing is like moving towards us, so it's being directed. And so that's the first part that I thought that was part of it was like artificial and had a controller. Now
Oh yeah.
he's been ahead of Stamets every step of the way. Tarka, like he somehow knows what's at the center of this thing, and he built a controller and has an actual like experiment. How does he know all of this stuff? It's wild. Like, what is happening behind the scenes in the Federation? Why didn't they share that information with Stamets? It was all surprise. I'm shocked actually that they just glossed over the fact that like none of this information was shared until they just showed up with this experiment. The ramifications of knowing what's at the center of this thing was way more profound than was let on, I think, in the show, or was able to be let on, because knowing that tells you immediately that that there's something there directing the show, or that there's some sort of energy field that is being directed towards certain things. And now they're discussing like back and forth. But ultimately, I'm going to get back to the actual question. If Picard came into the Discovery, crossed over into Discovery, I think you would find that there would be temporal elements and AI synth elements that like, and there was a danger, like an extra galactic or like dimensional danger that Picard was trying to solve, and it would team up with Burnham and their team, and they would have a good old time. That's my thoughts on that idea.
I would love it. I would love it. I think that's the only thing I can really say is I would freaking love it.
Thanks, man.
Um, yeah. So can I before, I know we're about to wrap, but can I
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
suggestion for a what if?
Please. Sure.
So a what if we had a short trek for all of the bridge characters. And
I
so
like
I'm
that.
going back to season 3. That
Okay.
episode where they get to Earth and they have to almost fight Earth. But at the end, all of the all of the bridge characters, um, all of the bridge characters have their moments, and like
Yes.
we take like they could have did after that tree episode, or like instead of
Mm.
Saru calling them all back up and being like, "We're gonna take a day. You're gonna get some shore leave for one day."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then they had like their 1 day adventure, and we explored that in a 15-minute short trek. I've said
That's
that
smart.
before, but listen, Paramount, CBS, listen to me. We want this. But it would be, I would love to hear like just from some of the random things that we've seen, like
Yes.
what viewers as well as the team comes up with as kind of like the backstories for all of
Mm-hmm.
these bridge characters, given the little information that we know. I can tell you from season 1 and season 2, Reese's backstory has to involve him not being able to shoot because Lorca called him out so many times for the fact that he ain't got no aim. Uh, there's no what if there. It is the fact that he ain't got no aim.
That's too bad. It's a shame. I could totally see that. Like the newest episode where Owo tried to stop Saru from doing something, and she was like, "You have." He's like, "You have your orders," and she was like, "I'm sorry, sir. Once upon a time, I lost someone, and this, that was like some. They tried to like give you like a little bit of a glimpse of like why the motivation behind her decision. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. It could be the short trek for Owo.
All right. Like I would love to understand more of a Warshika. Um, uh, I would love to understand a little bit more about Bryce. Like, oh, he's a surfer. Oh, okay. Like, did he grow up in Hawaii? Did he
Hmm.
grow up in some surfing, South Africa or California or
Hmm.
Brazil? I don't know. Like
Right.
putting all of that together and really like seeing it. I would love.
Yes. We don't really see much about their personal lives on Earth, like what it was like for them either before. Like, I love those scenes in Star Trek when they're between missions and they're just chilling at like headquarters or just walking around Earth or just being like regular citizens. Like whether we were at Cisco's or whether in Enterprise we're walking around for the Chinese joint when Phlox gets hit and stuff like that. Different stuff like that where you see them in their natural lives, like when Archer picks up Hoshi and she's just chilling in the jungle, teaching like a language lesson, and then this is just regular like xenolinguists just chilling and doing their thing. And there's their we're gonna take your teacher away.
Yeah.
So how they live their actual lives as not just necessarily civilians, but like in their civilian life, interacting with their like siblings and family and stuff. And
How did you get to Starfleet? Like,
yeah,
what was it? I love it. I love it.
yeah,
So I think we should do a little what if, not next week, not too, like a while away.
yes,
See if CBS and Paramount are really watching us and trusting us. Alex Kurtzman, I know you're out here. I know you hear me. I know. Let's make it happen.
I love it.
And we can wait.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for being here today. I had such a great time talking about all
Great
this
time.
stuff, and really, really, I really enjoyed it. And please come back anytime. Like, this is great stuff. If you're watching, please like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Twitter at Trekkers Delight. See us, ask us questions, ask Michael, ask me a question. If you want to see this CBS, reach out if you want to talk to us. No problem.
Clearly,
We'll
you
be
need
here
us in the writers' room.
Yeah, I know. DS9 season 8. We need to be there. Again, shout out to DS9. Happy anniversary. We love you. We can't wait to see what you'll do with Cisco and actually like integrate the DS9 finally into something. I can't wait for that. And of course, Prodigy coming out very soon. Please catch us on our live show. Check out our other shows, of course. And keep looking to the stars. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. Thanks for joining me today and helping me develop all this stuff. And any final words? I'll give you the final word. Go ahead, man.
Peace and long life.
Take care, brother. Enjoy.
See ya.
Enjoy your morning, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
See you all.
What's up, guys? My name is William Walker with LGB Trek. I'm finna arm wrestle my brother-in-law real quick. Last minute stuff, a lot of tequilas behind this. I'm not, he is. But we're about to talk about some Star Trek TNG, mainly the host, where we started to question Beverly Crusher's sexuality and how weird the episode is in general because they didn't have enough money to make trails. But right now, I'm gonna bring my brother-in-law in here, who's up here for the ring to go against me. Let's do this. Welcome to Trekkers Delight, baby. We're finna do this. Alright, cool, let's go. A lot.
Okay.
Dude.
Okay. Okay, we're doing it.
I gotta tell you, on the list of things I expected for this evening, this was not on it. This is not on it.
Wait, what's that? How do you sit there? You have to sit right there.
But I'm gonna move the table.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, damn.
Okay, let's do this.